Well, hey, everybody, glad to be with you again. And today I have a guest, and our topic is how to develop people in a fast-paced environment. This is going to be a great conversation, I believe. And I think it's something that every business, no matter what industry you're in, can probably identify with what we're going to talk about today because the world just is speeding up so much. And so, Kyle Bowen is our guest. He's the president of Hourglass Leadership, a leadership development app company. And previously, he was the chief people officer for a Chick-fil-A in Abilene, Texas. Currently, he lives in New Braunfels, Texas, with his wife Ashlyn and their puppy Pickles. And in his free time, he enjoys pickleball, reading, and volunteering with nonprofits. So, welcome, Kyle.
Thank you, Chris. I'm excited to be on today.
Yeah, well, we connected on LinkedIn a couple months or so ago, probably, and I've been on your podcast, and now I'm like, we need to have you on my podcast because I just think there's a lot of synergy in what you and I see in leadership and in the business world today, and how we can help organizations of all sizes. Don't you agree?
Oh, definitely. Like that's one of the things that drew me to you on LinkedIn is how the values that we both share, that we both profess, and just the work that we're doing, I really feel is aligned with what we're trying to do in different organizations around the country.
Yeah, absolutely. So before we get into the topic in more of an in-depth way, why don't you give us a backstory of your career journey? What made you interested in employee development in the first place?
I do not have a leadership background or a communications background. My degrees are in church ministry. And so that's where I always thought I would end up. That's where I felt called by God to be. And so ended up serving 3.5 years doing campus ministry with college students, and then a year and a half of youth ministry. And after that, I was like, okay, I don't want to do youth ministry anymore. Let me try to go back and work with college students. Had some different opportunities fall through where I ended up landing at Chick-fil-A. Had kind of ran out of my savings, had kept hearing no, and was like, okay, God, I'll do this for a year. Um, Begrudgingly, right, fighting
Yeah.
you every way. And while there, I realized that there was a tremendous ministry in being a good, faithful leader, encouraging people, helping them reach their goals, building them up, and that gave a lot of opportunities to share the faith. And so before we started recording, we were talking about the wonderful responsibility that business leaders have to advance the kingdom. And I found that at Chick-fil-A was there were so many people who had tremendous potential, but they didn't have the tools and skills that they needed to succeed. And
Mm.
so I was able to step in there and start creating leadership courses, mentorship programs, and over the years we saw some really cool results. And so we started getting asked by people, what are you doing? What's working? How did, do you just magically hire better people than us? And it's like, no, we're hiring the same people. We're just choosing to invest and pour into them. And that leads them being better in 6 months instead of worse.
Mm.
And so after enough people started asking us that, we're like, okay, what could we do to help them? What could we do? And so we basically took our systems, took all the leadership development knowledge that we had been working on over the last 6 years that I was with Chick-fil-A, and we said, okay, let's create an app that's simple, easy to use, but really helps with the culture building piece and the leadership development piece. And so we launched our app in March. And since then, we've been working with several organizations and then several coaches and consultants, really helping drive transformation in organizations across the country and even up into Canada, which has been fun.
Yeah, I love your story, and it's interesting. We may not the path we think we're going to take many times does not end up where we go, right? Or it's like we have this ideal in our mind, and then just life happens, changes happen. God leads us in different ways, and I think that being adaptable and, like you said, even maybe even begrudgingly sometimes, you're like, I'll do this for a period of time because I have to. But that's when you actually discover this is actually the opportunity or the place I need to be to learn lessons, to actually make an impact in the world. And I think most people by now understand that Chick-fil-A has done an incredible job overall as a company with their systems and processes to develop people and to build the culture. But what I find interesting is that even within that, you found even more in-depth ways to invest in people. So, what are some of the biggest challenges that you see today regarding engaging, developing employees, especially in fast-paced work environments like Chick-fil-A? But one of the reasons that kind of as I led into this whole conversation too is I don't want people thinking this is just a fast food, quick service industry issue, right? Because the world has gotten so much faster. I think the corporate space, I think that almost any industry, any leader I talk to, they feel like they're always behind. So when we say fast-paced work environments, I kind of think it's almost everybody.
Yes.
So what are those biggest challenges that you see when that is the reality?
Yeah, I think it's getting harder, and I'll definitely speak that it is a reality that when we launched this back in March, we were thinking, okay, we'll work with fast food companies, we'll work with small businesses, but we're working with large nonprofits like school districts, we're working with universities, we're working with um, businesses of all types, construction, fast food, cleaning companies, lots of other companies, restaurants. And we're working with coaches and consultants who are working with even a bigger variety of organizations. And so it's been really eye-opening to go, oh, this isn't a fast food problem. This is a universal problem where people aren't feeling cared for, people aren't feeling appreciated. And so, I mean, Gallup rates that only 20% of your employees feel highly engaged, right? Most of them are just kind of floating by because they don't feel bought in. They don't feel like you're buying into them, so why would they buy into you? And so that's created two big problems that I see. The first, which I see a lot in um, maybe your more traditional entry level jobs, so restaurants, quick service restaurants, construction companies even is turnover. And so there's a high rate of turnover as people just go, okay, I don't like it here. I've been here 6 months. You don't care about me. Let me just leave,
Hmm.
go out the door, right? And so that forces a constant turnover churn where you can never really move forward because you're always just spending so much time, energy, and money on staying in the same place.
Hmm.
The other challenge that I see, whether it's even I talk to law offices who are dealing with challenges. I talk to large manufacturing companies where their turnover is good, but what they're seeing is a term that I learned recently called job hugging, where it's somebody who they aren't leaving because they know the grass isn't greener elsewhere, but they're just staying put, giving maybe 50% effort, 60% effort. So it's not that they're doing so bad that you would fire them.
Hmm.
They're just in that awkward, mediocre zone where they used to be good. Now they don't feel engaged. They don't feel cared for. They don't feel invested in. And so they're giving that percentage of effort that's not helpful. And so that holds the team back too. And so it's been interesting seeing this shift as I've explored with more industries that every industry is facing an engagement crisis. It just, the symptoms might pop up different depending
Yeah.
on the industry.
It's very interesting you say that. My son, he's 17. He's a senior in high school. He's studying to be an electrician at our local career center, graduates in May, and he is working for this electrical company. And he was sharing that some of these very things you're talking about with me that he's seeing even as a young teenager in the just entering the workforce and talking about how certain employees and up in management have a bad reputation or how they're making other people feel and he's learning right now that there's no perfect workplace environment, so I think we all have to understand and acknowledge that because there's no perfect people, right? So but to your point, I also saw a video yesterday that a young woman was saying, you know what, if you get put on a performance plan at work, don't stress about it. Just know that the clock is ticking for you to find a job in the next 30, 60, 90 days. Don't even try to give more effort because they're already going to they're already going to get rid of you. That was her perspective. And I was like, wow. So instead of saying I need to improve in a certain area over the next, certain frame, the mindset of what she's saying at least, and probably what a lot of other people might even adopt is, well, they're going to get rid of me, so I just need to kind of, like you said, kind of hug the job, do the bare minimum to not get fired immediately, so I can find a new opportunity. And by the time that clock runs out, and so, can you imagine a workplace culture and what that would do for a company? I mean, or to a company, and how they would engage with their customers and their clients, and just the team culture. I mean, that's just crazy to me. But at the same time, that, like you said, there's reality to that.
Yeah. And I think it is a very, when I think about, okay, how does a belief like that come to be? Right? Where it's like, oh, if the performance improvement plan is my first indicator that I'm doing something wrong,
Hmm.
and it really could be, this is what I need to do to prove to HR that I can fire you.
Hmm.
And a lot of times, as I talk to some of my friends who work in more corporate environments, I met with a friend who didn't get a raise at the end of 2024. And they went in for their raise discussion and were thinking they were doing good. And the person basically said, hey, we aren't going to give you a raise. There was something that it's a pretty small thing, but you've been doing it wrong since June. And so, since you've been doing it wrong since June, we aren't giving you a raise.
So
Uh,
6 months.
6 months, 6 months of opportunity to coach them on something small and go, hey, here's what you should do better. But I'm finding fewer and fewer organizations adopting that coaching mindset, adopting that improvement mindset. They're just going, I don't want to be uncomfortable. I don't want to have a hard conversation with you, even if it's small. Um, and
Hmm.
so I'll just wait to the end and then fire you or put you on a performance plan where I'm hoping you quit so I don't have to pay you severance
Yep.
or have to pay unemployment tax or whatever. Um, but instead of doing the right thing and investing in people, coaching people, and previously I would have thought, okay, that makes sense in a fast food environment where people don't have these skills. But I'm realizing that leaders across the board haven't been trained on how to have a coaching conversation, how
Yeah.
to speak up and address issues when it happens, not 6 months after the fact. And so
Mhm.
I can see where these beliefs start being formed of, oh, if this is the bad sign, it's not going to get better no matter what you do. This is just procedure, which is really sad. But I can see both sides of it
Yep.
where it's like, no, if you get put on a performance plan, you should improve. But also, if this is the first time you're hearing of anything wrong, that's a really bad sign.
Yeah. Well, and like to your point, I think what has perpetuated these bad things we're talking about right now is, and what I've seen over the years too, and talk to leaders, is they're expected in their roles as managers, supervisors, department leaders, whatever their title may be, to lead that group, but they have never been led or developed themselves. But now, somehow, 20 years into their career, 30 years into their career, they've been promoted to a
Hmm.
level of incompetence in this area. And they may have been really good at what they did previously, but now they've got a team of people to manage. And I share the story all the time. A good friend of mine, he told me years ago, he said, Chris, I don't know. I keep getting promoted, but I'm not being trained. He's in a major corporation, and he's like, I'm promoted into roles where I'm leading people, but I've never been really led that well and developed when under somebody, and now I'm
Hmm.
expected to lead that division. And it just really got me to thinking about, to your point, this is the norm is avoidance. The norm is doing nothing, because really I think it's not something that's been modeled, and that's one of the big things I talk a lot about on this show or other, places, because if we can model for people how to lead and how to develop and what we're doing for ourselves, and then help others do it as well for themselves, and how I can help you be better, it just changes the whole temperature and environment, the atmosphere of an organization. So that's kind of the negative stuff, but let's shift. What are some of the good things you're actually seeing leaders doing to respond to these challenges?
Yeah, the simplest thing that I think everybody looks past as almost like too obvious is building a relationship with your team.
Mm,
And everybody knows they do it. But I think the leaders who do this the best make it a formalized and structured process.
hmm
Because a lot of people, I think they're like, oh, yeah, I build a relationship with my team, but they never go past the surface level conversation. They never talk
hmm
about anything besides work. It's just kind of side by side. They never sit down across from
hmm
somebody for 15 minutes, 20 minutes, 30
hmm
minutes, and just go, okay, let's get to know each other. What are your goals?
hmm
Okay, those are your work goals. What about your personal goals? What are you going to be? And I've found that the leaders who can get past the surface level relationship and really create a level of trust where the team member they're leading understands, oh, you are for me. You're helping me succeed not just at work, but in my personal life. That's where that buy-in um, really starts forming. It also really helps later feedback because it's not, oh, this is my boss who only talks to me when I'm in trouble, which
hmm
I think a lot of bosses, that's the stereotype.
Yeah.
But it's, oh, this is my boss. He's helping me succeed in a lot of ways. I trust him. And so when he's telling me that I'm doing something wrong or that I need to improve in a certain way, he's not just hating on me,
Yeah.
he's trying to help me get better. And when they follow up and actually say, okay, yeah, I gave you that feedback, but now I'm checking in, I'm working with you on getting better at it, that
hmm
builds added trust. But it all comes back to this: are you intentionally and systematically building a relationship with your employees, or are you just kind of hoping that, oh, over time, I'm sure we'll get to know each other. But what I'm saying is that by the time you think that'll happen, they're either out the door or they're checked out.
Yeah.
And so just starting with systems that make sure that you are doing those check-ins, you are setting goals with them, you are giving them feedback, you are giving them opportunities to learn and grow. That's where I'm seeing businesses take off and like do even more than it was possible. And some of the best ones are investing in like the lowest tier people that traditionally never got invested in. And I'm going, oh, y'all are doing really great things because you've got your entire workforce
hmm
um, energized, not just your traditional top 3 to 5 leaders.
hmm No, I really like that. It's interesting as you're saying this. I'm having flashbacks of, I mean, this goes up back close to 15 years ago. I started at a new job, and the culture of the team was not there wasn't collaboration. There was some infighting and turf war kind of thing, right? And one of the first things I did was I just started scheduling monthly team meetings that we all got together and talked, just got everybody on the same page on all the
Hmm.
different departments. And then I started having one-on-one meetings once a month with everybody. And that was the cadence, right? We had a team meeting and then we had a one-on-one with each person. And it transformed everything. Like within a few months, everything changed. The whole environment changed because the team started to be together more, and they realized we're not against each other. We just need to work through some logistical things that, the other side of it was on the one-on-ones. It was any type of skepticism about me as the leader coming into that organization kind of just dissolved because, I was very intentional about how are you doing personally.
Hmm.
It wasn't just about work, it was you as a human being. And as you're talking about this, it was very systematic. I didn't necessarily see it. I wouldn't have used that term back then
Hmm.
necessarily, but for me, I was there. I was just trying to find ways to connect with people, trying to figure out what's going on, with them individually as well as the team. And so um, I know that I did that right and did that well. But what was interesting was I had never had anybody do that for me previously. And I'm sure I had to learn that somewhere along the way that, I read a
Hmm.
book or heard somebody share it, probably John Maxwell or somebody talk about the investment. And but the bottom line was that's a real world case. Like I lived that, and it was transformational for our team. And I like what you're saying though. It's that systematic cadence. What are you doing? And it doesn't have to be, for me, I blocked out an hour once a month with my team. It could be a 15-minute conversation. It doesn't have to be, an hour, but to me, it has to be a calendar issue, right? It has to be
Yep.
once a month, we're going to do this, or whether it's team meeting or individual meetings, once a week team meetings, whatever it needs to be that fits your environment. Make it a calendar issue and protect that like it's the biggest thing ever, because it is. Because if your team's not healthy, then the other stuff that you're trying to that you would basically let overrun that calendar spot is going to just keep perpetuating and get worse. So I love what you're saying is the relational side of it is so important. And I think this goes back to something I think you and I both would agree with is we're leading human beings first, not human doings. They're not cogs in a
Yes.
machine. They're people with real world, real life issues, challenges, problems, struggles, and strengths. And if we lean into those and we invest in those people and those relationships, it just changes everything.
Oh, definitely. And I think like this is interesting because both of us really lean into the okay, you're a human being. And then I think people can hear systematize and they think that's not human, right?
Right.
And even us using an app, people are like, so you're trying to promote humanity with an app, isn't that backwards? And we were like, no, we want to assist and enhance the human
Mhm.
experience of the meetings and all that, but humans need systems to help them actually do these things.
Mhm.
Because going back to my ministry days, and I'm sure you'll share the same assessment, the youth and the college students connected with people who showed up
Mhm.
and they loved the people who showed up every single Sunday or every single Wednesday night or whatever it was.
Mhm.
And it wasn't that these individuals were superheroes. It wasn't that even in the workplace, it wasn't that you as a boss are just incredibly better. It's that you show up consistently for them. And I
Yeah.
think that's what people are really wanting for is that, okay, will you show up for me?
Mhm.
Okay, and we're supposed to meet again in a month. Did that happen? Okay, and
Mhm.
then we're supposed to meet again in a month. Did that happen? And I
Mhm.
see too often people forget the very like emotional aspect of their team, the fact that they are human and it's they're going, well, I met with them once and yeah, it's been 6 weeks and we were supposed to meet a couple weeks ago, but I'm sure it'll all work out.
Right.
Um, but all you're telling the team is there are other things more important than you in my world.
Yeah.
And what happens once you've told them that? Well, then they start thinking about everything that is more important in their world, where it's family stress, financial stress, parenting stress,
Mhm.
all the other pressures that are on them outside of work. And they're wanting help with that too, because they don't know how to solve everything. We're all just trying to get through this life together as best we can. And
Mhm.
so when you're going, okay, you've got all these out of work pressures, and we aren't going to talk about those, and I'm not helping you succeed at work. It's like, oh, then you don't care about me. And you
Yeah.
can say you do, but until you create that environment where they feel it, that's the true measure because they
Mhm.
aren't made just to do work. They're
Mhm.
coping with a lot of stressors outside of life, and we have to acknowledge that and create systems that
Mhm.
help them through that, not just pass it to the other side and pretend it doesn't exist.
And I want to emphasize too, because as you bring that up, when you're systematizing and you're scheduling, that cadence of meetings, it doesn't mean that you don't have the side conversations either, right? It's a both and.
Yes.
It's the thing is the schedule stuff is the dedicated time that we know we're going to show up. But it could be in the kind of the water cooler, so to speak, conversations, passing down the hall, sitting at the table eating lunch, or just checking in on a Monday morning, like, hey, how was your weekend? How's your family doing? Or you knew somebody's kid was sick. How are they feeling? Or they had a big event. How'd that go? Like it's the little things. And, Kyle, I think the personalization of leadership, the presence that you mentioned, another word that I've been really big on for years is consistency.
Mm,
It's, are you consistent? And do people know what they can expect when you show up? Because I heard a story years ago that said, we kind of gauge how our day's going to go by how the boss walks in. If he's mad,
yep.
it's going to be a bad day. If he's happy, it's going to be a good day. Well, that creates a whiplash, thing for the team, and that doesn't help your culture. Um, so so showing up the relational side, that's the good stuff. What are people maybe avoiding or ignoring that you've noticed or that you're coming across?
Yeah, I think people are avoiding hard conversations,
Hmm.
where whether that's this will sound weird. They're even avoiding the like positive praise conversations,
Mm,
because I think people don't know how to talk to one another, and I
mm,
think COVID's just made that worse. Um, but I don't think people are comfortable going past the surface level conversation and saying, hey, you're doing a great job. Here's how you're doing a great job.
mm.
Let's see if we can even do better at what you're doing, right? I think people just tend to say, good job, Chris.
Yeah,
And
attaboys, right? It's like it's
right, uh,
very, very generic and vanilla.
yes. And so when they have a hard conversation, it tends to be, okay, here's what you're doing wrong.
Hmm.
And so anytime you get called to the office or you get pulled aside for a one-on-one, it's, oh, I'm in trouble. And you just get that feeling like you're called to the principal's office when you were a kid, and it's that sick feeling in your stomach, and you're like this again. And all you can do is your perception of your boss warps to, oh, this is somebody who tells me I'm in trouble, instead
Hmm.
of this is somebody who helps me succeed. And
Hmm.
so when you avoid the hard conversations, whether it's avoiding the very fruitful, very constructive, very specific, this is what you're doing well, and you also tend to avoid many of the hard conversations about, hey, here's how you're doing poorly, until it's let's drop the hammer on them,
Hmm.
you're really putting your team at a disservice,
Hmm.
because all they're hearing is, um, you're doing the message that they're hearing is, well, I don't know how I'm doing. I don't know how I'm doing. And it's just kind of vague, and they're in a void, which is really tough to make forward progress. And then they just live in constant fear that the hammer might drop one day,
Yeah.
instead of having the freedom and the confidence to hear, oh, I am doing good, let me drive faster, right?
Hmm.
Or let me, oh, here's a little thing that I need to correct. And so, like, the analogy of the highway and the parking lot has been in my head. And a lot of times in a parking lot, there are no rules. And everybody has to drive slower because you don't know who's pulling out, you don't know who's going in, you don't know if somebody will cut across your lane, and
Hmm.
everybody's driving 5 miles an hour or less. Versus a highway, everybody's driving 75 miles an hour, 80 miles an hour, or 65 if you're outside of Texas. Um, but everybody can drive that fast because there's clear rules, there's clear lanes, there are guardrails. Everybody knows exactly what's going on around them. There are clear expectations. And with that, you can move really fast. And so a lot of times people are like, well, I don't want to step on any toes. But really, what you're doing is you're just saying, okay, here are the guardrails.
Hmm.
And what that does is people can move faster and advance your mission quicker,
Hmm.
instead of just constantly being on guard going, okay, when is the hammer going to drop? When am I going to get blindsided
Hmm.
by some poor feedback?
Hmm. That's really good. It makes me think of a friend of mine. He was telling me a story a few years ago that he was in an organization, and I think it was a financial services firm, but basically their receptionist, she was younger and inexperienced, and she was struggling with some of the administrative things she was needing to do, but she was really good at marketing and promotion. And instead of saying, you know what, you're struggling over here, but you're really excelling over here, let's shift you and let's find a way to utilize your skills, they fired her because they basically just said, you're not doing your job. And she was struggling. And he said, admittedly, she was struggling. But the problem was, he's like, we lost this great asset to our team because it was very short-sighted. Like, well, you're not doing this, this, and this, even though you're doing this over here really well. But you know, your title, right, was
Hmm.
this. So on one level, I can understand that, yeah, maybe she was struggling with her original job description, but they also had an asset in their midst to maybe have an opportunity to say, you know what, let's put you in the right seat. You know, you came on the bus, so to speak, as Jim Collins talks about, but you're not in the right seat to do, and you can help us over here better, and we'll backfill and figure that out for the administrative reception side of things. And it was just an interesting thing for me to hear that people acknowledged what she was good at, but still fired her anyway. And instead of saying, you know what, we could do this better, and instead of having the hard conversations, even of like you said, even when the hard, it feels hard of let's do a strengths and weaknesses analysis, and let's make sure that uh, things are getting done the way we need to for the company. They just avoided that altogether. They didn't want to do the hard work of repositioning her and finding somebody else probably, so they just fired her. And it's just crazy to me because I think, nobody's good at everything, right? Job
Hmm.
descriptions. The funny thing about job descriptions to me are they're what people put on Indeed or wherever to get, to say, here's the job. And then nobody ever really looks at them again.
Nope.
It's just, and then there's like these expectations that form of, well, I'm doing these three things that are on my job description, but I'm doing these eight things that aren't. But you're basically going to, rate me and rank me in my performance based on things that honestly aren't even on this thing that I was initially even hired to do. So you're right. I mean, having the hard conversation, it also makes me think about the five love languages. How do people hear you when, it's some people, it's like it truly is words of affirmation. Hey, you're doing really well at, X, Y, and Z. Sometimes that just doesn't, that's nice, but it doesn't really hit for people. So finding ways to connect with people um, is huge. I think how does this employee, how does this team member, how do they hear the positives? How do they hear the negative stuff, the challenging stuff? There was a guy that I led years ago that in those one-on-ones we discovered, you know what, he'd been with us for 10 years at the organization, and he was burning out, and he was just kind of done, and he wanted to focus on a different skill set, and we helped him find that path forward. And he's still a good friend that, I catch up with every now and then. He left gracefully. It was a great experience. Everything was positive, even though he was
Hmm.
struggling in his job at the time. We were like, well, we want to respect what you've done for us and bring value to us, but we also realize this season is winding down with us. So let's help you make that transition best. Let's do what's best for you, your family, the organization. And it was one of the best, I'll say, exits I've ever seen. But it was a combined mutual thing based on relationship, based on caring for that person, not just for, the task at hand.
Yep. And that's something we found a lot as we did our mentorship program was we started saying, okay, who wants to be invested in and who wants to buy in and who doesn't? And we
Hmm.
started saying, okay, no, because they were like, well, do I still meet with them because they don't care about this place? And we're like, no, meet with them. Just figure out, okay, so where do you want to go?
Yeah.
It was like one guy was like, "Well, I want to be an electrician," and so we're like, "Okay, well, we know, especially like our the owner operator of the Chick-fil-A knew 4 or 5 electricians." So we called him up and was like, "Hey, I've got a guy, hard worker, doesn't see this as his future, wants to be this." And so like before the end of the day, we had 2 internship interviews with, and so he went, both offered him a position. He chose the one that worked best for him.
Hmm.
And it was funny because people were like, oh, wait, so you invested in somebody so they could leave? And it was like, well, we invested in somebody so we could figure out if they'll buy into us or not. But it first started with us buying into them and investing in with them.
Hmm.
But it gives you a great picture of, okay, how do we help you exit well if you don't want to be here,
Right.
Like we aren't forcing you to be here. Nobody's tying you up and forcing you to work at Chick-fil-A.
Right.
And so that gave a great perspective of like, oh, wait, when you invest in people, you also figure out, oh, what's going on outside of
Mm-hmm.
um, the world. Because there were other people that we invested in them, and they were like, I don't know how much I can give back to you. And we're like, oh, what's going on? And they're like, well, my mom got diagnosed with cancer. My dad can't work. And so I'm at 17
Mm-hmm.
supporting a family on my Chick-fil-A income. And we're like, oh yeah, like like you were doing enough.
Yeah.
And thankfully the mom recovered and all that, and it became a better situation. Um, and 6 months later, they're able to buy in more. But it just gave us that perspective of, yeah, if they come to work one day looking sad and depressed and tired,
Mm-hmm.
it's not us, and we just need to support them and love them and walk them through this. But we aren't going to be like, man, they aren't turning in a great performance. Should we fire them? When that would have been the worst
Right.
thing, and like maybe slightly evil.
Yeah. Right. Well, that's just thing. I mean, even in my book, The Magnetic Leader, right? My essential action number 9 that I talk about is loving people, and I even address that in my book. Of that may feel like a weird topic in the business, world, but really what it comes down to is, do you care enough about people to help them? And are you investing in them, helping them develop? Are you also caring for them when there's struggles? And some of the best stories I've heard is people saying, you know what, my loyalty to my company will be forever, because when I was going through that hard time, I was sick or my family was sick or something was going on, they stood by me in the midst of that. And even though it was harder maybe on the team and the organization, they cared for me as a person enough so that I could take care of those things like you just brought up. So I'm telling you folks, like the loyalty that you can get from people when you truly do treat them as human beings and valued people, it just changes the game in these organizations. And so Kyle, let's shift a little bit here though and go to you. So you create this app, and I want you to talk a little bit about that, because like you said, it can seem, people can say, well, the technology doesn't feel very human, but you actually create it so that it would be more of a human way to lead people. So talk to us about that.
Yeah, so we didn't want to replace humans. We wanted to help humans do what they wanted to do, but struggle with it. And so we looked at, okay, what are the four main drives to employee engagement that create great cultures? And so they were one-on-one meetings, goals, feedback, and opportunities to grow.
Mm,
And so that's largely what the app does is you can run one-on-one meetings, so they can be mentorship meetings, they can be any type of one-on-one, but the goal is to create a mentorship experience where your leaders are talking with your team members and employees, and they're building those deep relationships that Chris, you and I have been talking about this whole time. You can also run those two meetings, because when an organization is not aligned, that can also create some weird dysfunction and disengagement, because if nobody knows where the ship is headed, it can be really easy to jump overboard accidentally and be like, wait, where is everybody? I thought we were going this way. Y'all are over there.
mm,
We also found that goal setting is huge, where if a organization, everybody from top to bottom knows the organization's goals and knows where they're headed, they can buy into that purpose.
mm,
And so a lot of times what I see is not that employees disagree with an organization's purpose, they just forgot it because it was said once at the meeting in January or February, and now it's November, and
yeah.
nobody's said or talked about it again. But having ways to keep that in front of people, also tracking personal and professional goals,
Mm,
where everybody can be crystal clear on how am I growing, how can I get better each day, and have that mentor helping them.
mm,
The third piece is feedback. And so everybody can get crystal clear on what behaviors are helping them succeed and what behaviors are holding them back. And so this really allows every person on your team to know how to grow and succeed in that
Mm-hmm.
so that the growth isn't accidental, but it's intentional. And they know, okay, you're actually supporting me in this. And then we've got about 20 hours. The fourth piece is that we've got about 20 hours of leadership development and personal life skills videos. So, teaching leaders the people skills that they need to succeed. So, how to handle these hard conversations, how to lead effective one on ones, how to set goals and habits with their team, but it's also all about the outside of work stressors. And so we partnered with trained licensed professionals who are outstanding in their field to create videos related to stress and anxiety, parenting, personal finance, addiction, everything that kind of stresses people out outside of work. They can get some help and relief so that they come to work feeling refreshed and better and able to focus on work, not worried about their house payment or whatever that is. And so,
Wow.
in a gist, that's what our app does. And so, if it
And if people do have their own content they want to upload to it, they can do that too, right?
Yes. So organizations can create their own meeting contents, feedback templates. They can upload their own content. Coaches and consultants can do the same. Where if they've got frameworks, worksheets, videos, they can upload that and work with organizations that way as well. And so it's a really customizable tool. It's a
Mm-hmm.
really flexible tool that can meet you where your culture is and what your culture's needs are, and I partner almost as a consultant with you on how best to use this tool. What are your goals? How can we help you use those goals,
Mm-hmm.
or get those
Mm-hmm.
goals through
Yeah.
our tool?
How to set it up and be specific to your situation, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then ongoing support so that it's not just okay, I set this and forgot about you, but
Yeah.
helping you succeed over the long term.
Well, and one of the things I really like about what you've done there, Kyle, is I mean, we all walk around, right, with cell phone in our pocket, in our hand, whatever, and by having the app, anywhere on the go, people, downtime, people can just go right into it and engage with it and do the things like you're talking about there that are built in. And I just think, a lot of times when you talk about time, the time crunch for leaders, to me, I think if they have a 5 minute margin right in their block in their schedule, things are kind of slow at the store or whatever, they can do some work on that and they can go through and engage with their employees that way or set some things up, and it doesn't have to take hours upon hours, and you've given them basically the platform to just do what they need to do with their people, and you give them a dashboard, right? I mean, they can log in and see, from a dashboard perspective. And this is one of the things that you and I think initially connected on too was it's really hard to measure and gauge leadership development, personal growth,
Mhm.
and you through your app are giving people more visuals and things to measure. Am I having my meetings? Are they doing the tasks that we agreed that they need to do? Those types of things. So there's some measurable visual objective, data right in front of leaders and their teams, so that it's not just this nebulous, like I think they're growing, I think they're doing, it's kind of like you it's that I hope aspirational thing, but it's not really happening. So um, I think it's awesome what you're doing. You give demos of your app, right?
I
So
do.
so how do people, if somebody says, what, this sounds really interesting, where would they go to set up a demo with you?
Yeah, so they can email me at kyle@hourglass-leadership.com. They can reach out to me on LinkedIn. That's how you and I met, Chris, and
Mhm.
I'm really active there.
Yeah.
And if you even want to shoot me a text or give me a call, my number is 530-615-8188. I'm happy to connect. Really, however,
Yeah.
this is something I'm super passionate about, and so I'm
Yeah.
always down to give people free walkthroughs, even if it's like, oh, you aren't in a position to buy, even if you just want to talk through things. I love showing it off and just talking through possibilities or perspectives or
Yeah.
talking about leadership with people.
All right. So last question here. What advice would you give a leader who feels overwhelmed and guilty for not investing in his or her group enough, his or people enough?
Yeah, I think start small.
Mm,
I think even a like you did with your organization back in the day, a 15-minute one-on-one meeting once a month.
mhm,
Okay, if you've got four people on your team, that's an hour a month. You've got
mhm,
160 working hours. That 1 month of your time in four 15-minute one-on-ones would probably be the most helpful hour of your life.
mhm,
And I think just starting small, letting your team know that you are for them, that you're engaging with them, and starting to just build that rhythm will lead to significant dividends where I think 2 or 3 months further on, you don't see those one-on-ones as just one more thing, but
yeah.
you start going, oh, wow, I'm seeing the results. I'm able to delegate to my team more. I'm able to free up more time so that I can invest in them even more.
Mhm,
Um, but it doesn't have to be this otherworldly shift where you start committing
mhm.
tons of time and resources. Just starting small and intentionally setting aside time to build a system where you can connect with everybody on your team.
I love that because I think that you're right. A lot of times it can feel overwhelming. It's like you think about all the things you have to do or should do or whatever, and I think starting small, being kind to yourself to ease into it's kind of like the zero entry pool, right? Like don't just jump into the deep end, like wade into it, grow into it because as you have those 15-minute meetings and you start to hear things and learn things, it may spur on other activities, other meetings, other follow-ups, and you can then address those then, but I think a lot of leaders, it's that whole thing of I've got to have the perfect system in place to get started. And what you're saying is not that. It's just start where you are, start with what you can. And sometimes you have to start small anyway, because a lot of leaders have made these big grandiose promises to their teams or their staffs or whole organizations. We're going to do this big initiative, and it's like this big launch, and then it fails to measure up. But if you
Hmm.
just start with, hey, I would like to start getting together with you once a month for a 15 minutes check in, see how you're doing, see where, make sure we're staying on track on our goals and objectives. People are going to be a little skeptical sometimes at first if you've
Hmm.
not done that. But if you, once again, you do it this month, and then you do it next month, and you do it the next month, and you start to show your consistency and persistence in it, people really do start to say, you know what, he's actually serious. She's actually serious. We're going to do this. Um, and that builds trust. It builds that that depth on the team. So I love how you said that. I think it's a great way to wrap this up today, Kyle. Thanks so much again because we know that the world is moving at the speed of light, it feels like, and all businesses and trying to keep up with now you throw AI into it and it accelerates that. I mean, there's just so much going on, but I really appreciate you and your heart for people and developing people, but also how to not be afraid of the technology and how to merge technology to be a tool that we can utilize. So, um, I'll definitely put your information in the show notes and everything so people know how to reach out to you as well. And then we will hopefully have some folks reach out and learn about your app and all the things that could benefit their team for.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. Thank you so much for your time. I really enjoyed this conversation, Chris.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Take care.
You too.